When Hardcore Pawn first hit television screens, it promised more than just a look inside Detroit's most notorious pawn shop. Viewers were hooked on the raw family drama, the endless stream of desperate customers, and the larger-than-life personalities of the Gold family and their employees. Les Gold, the no-nonsense patriarch, along with his children, Seth and Ashley, turned the show into a cultural phenomenon. Millions tuned in to watch the heated arguments, outrageous deals, and the never-ending tension that made every episode feel unpredictable. But while the cameras captured the highs of pawnshop life, what they didn't show were the darker realities lurking just behind the counter. Fame brought attention, money, and influence. But it also carried conflict, broken relationships, and unexpected tragedy. For many cast members, the end of Hardcore Pawn didn't mean a smooth ride into the sunset. Some faced personal struggles that worsened when the spotlight faded. Others became embroiled in controversies that changed their lives forever. And in certain cases, heartbreak followed, leaving fans shocked at how quickly fortunes turned. This is the tragic ending of the Hardcore Pawn cast, a story of fractured family ties, haunting regrets, and the cruel reminder that reality television rarely shows the full truth. When Hardcore Pawn premiered on True TV in 2010, few could have predicted the cultural storm it was about to unleash. The show centered on American Jewelry and Loan, the Detroit-based pawn shop owned by Les Gold, a third-generation pawnbroker. What made the series instantly stand out was not just the odd items customers brought in, but the explosive family dynamic between Les, his son Seth, and his daughter Ashley. Detroit was the perfect backdrop for the show. Once the heart of America's auto industry, the city had fallen on hard economic times. Unemployment was high, neighborhoods were crumbling, and for many, pawn shops became lifelines. People walked into American Jewelry and Loan with prized possessions, heirlooms, and sometimes junk, hoping to trade them for enough cash to pay rent, cover bills, or simply get through the week. That raw desperation was something Hardcore Pawn didn't shy away from showing, and audiences couldn't look away. But what really kept viewers glued to the screen wasn't just the customers. It was the fiery, volatile Gold family. Les, the patriarch, ran his shop with an iron fist. He was shrewd, sharp-tongued, and unwilling to lose a single dollar in a deal. Seth, his son, brought a business-minded approach, often clashing with his sister Ashley, who was equally determined to prove herself as capable and tough. Their constant sibling rivalry often boiled over into screaming matches, with Les forced to step in as referee. At first, the fight seemed entertaining. Viewers tuned in week after week, eager to see what new argument would erupt. But as the seasons went on, the tension felt less like scripted television drama and more like a real fracture forming in the family. Seth accused Ashley of being reckless in business. Ashley, in turn, accused Seth of being arrogant and dismissive. Les, caught in the middle, seemed torn between supporting his children and keeping his business intact. Behind the scenes, insiders claimed the fights were very real. While producers may have encouraged drama for the cameras, the Gold family's deep-rooted issues ran far beyond television editing. The pawn shop wasn't just a workplace, it was their legacy, and each family member wanted control. That power struggle created bitterness that no amount of TV fame could fix. As Hardcore Pawn grew in popularity, so did the chaos. Fans began showing up at the store daily, not only to pawn their belongings, but to catch a glimpse of the stars they saw on TV. Some customers caused scenes, hoping for a chance to be featured on an episode. Others came simply to hurl insults, testing the Gold family's patience. Security became a constant concern, and the line between business and entertainment blurred. While Les enjoyed the fame, it came at a cost. The Gold family became targets of criticism, accused of exploiting the struggles of Detroit residents for profit and ratings. Many viewers felt uncomfortable with how customers in desperate situations were treated, with their humiliation broadcast for the world to see. The Golds defended themselves, saying they were running a real business and giving people opportunities they otherwise wouldn't have had. But the criticism stuck, and over time the show's reputation darkened. Still, the drama kept viewers hooked, and the Gold family leaned into it. Les's booming voice, Seth's calculated strategies and Ashley's fiery temper turned them into household names. Yet behind the fame, the fractures widened. The show that had made them stars was also pulling them apart, and the chaos of their public lives was spilling into their private ones. For the Gold family and their employees, the success of Hardcore Pawn was a double-edged sword. It gave them wealth and recognition, but also sowed seeds of resentment, bitterness, and betrayal. And as history has shown time and again, what rises in the glare of reality television rarely stays shining for long. The beginning of Hardcore Pawn was filled with energy, chaos, and opportunity. But it also planted the seeds for the tragic endings that would later unfold for the cast members who thought the cameras would secure their legacy forever. From the beginning, one of the most gripping elements of Hardcore Pawn wasn't the strange items or heated negotiations. It was the volatile relationship between Ashley and Seth Gold. The sibling rivalry, mixed with their determination to prove themselves in the family business, created fireworks that fueled the show's drama. But what fans saw on camera was only a glimpse of the tension brewing behind the scenes. Ashley Gold Broad, Les's daughter, quickly became known as the no-nonsense, sharp-tongued woman who wasn't afraid to stand her ground. To many viewers, she was a refreshing counterbalance to her brother Seth, who approached the pawn shop with a cold, calculated business mind. Their clashes became legendary. Ashley accusing Seth of undermining her authority, Seth accusing Ashley of being careless with deals, and both turning to Les to play mediator. For audiences, it was entertaining. But for the family, it was exhausting. Over the course of 9 seasons, those arguments stopped feeling like good TV and began to take a toll on their personal lives. Ashley, in particular, struggled with her role. While she was a major draw for viewers, she often felt overshadowed by her father and brother. Her ideas were dismissed, her authority questioned, and her presence in the family business undervalued. By the time the show ended in 2015, Ashley had reached her breaking point. She left American Jewelry and Loan to start her own venture, Pawn Chick Radio, where she focused on jewelry and accessories. At first, it seemed like a chance for a fresh start. But the reality was far less glamorous. Without the backing of the TV show, her independent projects never gained the same momentum. Fans who once watched her weekly moved on, and Ashley faded from the spotlight. The bitterness she felt toward her family didn't fade either. Interviews she gave after her departure hinted at unresolved resentment, suggesting that her time on Hardcore Pawn left deeper wounds than anyone realized. Seth, on the other hand, stayed by Les's side. After Ashley's departure, Seth became the heir apparent to American Jewelry and Loan. Yet even he struggled with the fallout. While he gained control of the business, he also inherited the burden of repairing the family's fractured image. He was painted by fans as the villain of the show, arrogant, dismissive, and constantly undermining his sister. In the world of reality TV, perception often becomes reality, and Seth's reputation suffered. Despite his business acumen, many viewers never warmed to him, and his public image was scarred long after the cameras stopped rolling. Les Gold, the patriarch, may have kept his business intact, but at what cost? For all his authority and control, he couldn't prevent the breakdown of his children's relationship. The pawn shop survived, but the family bonds did not. The fame that had once seemed like a blessing had left scars that money couldn't heal. Even beyond the Golds, the fallout from the show affected employees who became fan favorites. Staff members who once enjoyed the spotlight found themselves returning to ordinary lives, some struggling financially, others fading into obscurity. Reality TV fame is fleeting, and when the cameras leave, so do the opportunities. For many, life after Hardcore Pawn was a harsh reality check. The Gold family may have found success on television, but their story is a cautionary tale of how fame magnifies every flaw and deepens every wound. The very show that brought them wealth and recognition also tore apart their family dynamic, leaving bitterness and resentment in its wake. And for Ashley, Seth, and even Les himself, the tragic ending wasn't about business at all. It was about the loss of trust, unity, and the bond that once made them more than just business partners. While Hardcore Pawn gave audiences a wild, chaotic view of pawnshop life, much of the turmoil carried over behind the scenes. For the Gold family, reality TV fame didn't mean stability. It often amplified their problems. Les Gold, the patriarch, became both admired and criticized. Some viewers saw him as a shrewd businessman who knew how to handle the rough streets of Detroit, while others accused him of being too harsh and cutthroat. His no-nonsense attitude earned respect, but it also created rifts with employees and even his own children. Seth Gold, Les's son, struggled to step out from under his father's shadow. On the show, he often came across as calm and analytical, but privately, the weight of family expectations and TV exposure wore him down. The constant clashes with his sister Ashley weren't just for TV, they reflected deep-rooted family tensions that worsened as cameras rolled. Ashley Gold, known for her fiery personality, bore much of the criticism. She was painted as argumentative and difficult, yet many forget she was also balancing motherhood, business stress, and public judgment. Eventually, the strain became too heavy, and she stepped away from the pawn shop and the show entirely. And then there were the staff and customers, many who became infamous thanks to their outrageous behavior on screen. Some faced legal troubles, personal battles with addiction, or financial ruin once the cameras stopped rolling. The fame from Hardcore Pawn was fleeting, and for some, it only magnified their hardships. In truth, the cast members' struggles highlight a darker reality. The pawn shop was never just about quirky deals and funny confrontations. It was about survival, tough decisions, and the heavy price of putting real lives on display for entertainment. When Hardcore Pawn first aired, it wasn't just another reality show. It was an explosive hit that gave audiences a raw look at Detroit's pawn scene. Les Gold, the strong-willed patriarch, ran American Jewelry and Loan like a battlefield commander. His children, Seth and Ashley, clashed constantly, creating drama that kept viewers hooked for years. Employees and colorful customers became household names overnight, and the Gold's pawn shop transformed into a tourist destination. For a while, it seemed as though the Gold family had cemented their legacy as reality TV royalty. But behind the laughter, arguments and outrageous moments caught on camera, the cast members faced personal challenges that grew darker as time passed. Fame, as it often does, brought not just opportunity but also relentless pressure, harsh criticism, and the kind of scrutiny that no one can fully prepare for. The show's end didn't close the chapter for the Golds. It opened the door to a series of struggles that would haunt them long after the cameras stopped rolling. For Les Gold, the larger-than-life head of the family, the decline was perhaps the most painful. Known for his quick thinking, no-nonsense attitude, and decades of experience in the pawn world, Les had always been a fighter. But when the show ended, the steady stream of tourists and fans slowed down. Without the constant buzz of television fame, business at American Jewelry and Loan became more difficult to sustain at its once thriving level. The man who had prided himself on being indestructible suddenly found himself battling financial pressure and the weight of expectations. His greatest tragedy wasn't just the decline of business, but the realization that his life's work had become defined by reality TV rather than his years of dedication to the pawn trade. Seth Gold, always the calmer, business-minded son, faced a different type of downfall. Viewers often saw him as the voice of reason among the chaos, but outside the show, he struggled to step out from under his father's shadow. Despite his business smarts, Seth's post-show ventures never reached the same heights. Worse, he carried the stigma of being the son from Hardcore Pawn. No matter what he tried, people saw him through the lens of the series. That identity became a prison of its own, leaving Seth questioning whether he had truly made a name for himself or simply lived in the orbit of his father's fame. Ashley Gold's story was perhaps the most heartbreaking of all. On the show, she was portrayed as fiery, temperamental, and often at odds with her brother. Many fans loved her blunt honesty, while others criticized her for being too confrontational. Unfortunately, that TV image followed her long after the series ended. No matter what she did, people remembered Ashley for the explosive fights rather than her strengths as a businesswoman and mother. She eventually left the pawn industry altogether, choosing instead to focus on her family and jewelry ventures. Yet for Ashley, the tragedy was that her true self was overshadowed by an edited persona that reality TV had crafted, a persona that would follow her for decades. And then there were the employees and recurring faces, some of whom became cult favorites during the show's run. Unfortunately, many of them faced even harsher realities. Some returned to struggling with addiction, legal troubles, or financial collapse. What was framed as entertainment for millions of viewers often represented real-life hardship for these individuals. Fame magnified their flaws, and when the spotlight vanished, many were left with nothing but broken reputations. Looking at where they are now, it's clear that hardcore pawn left behind more scars than success. The Gold family may still operate their shop, but the dynamic that once fueled ratings is fractured. The relationships between Les, Seth, and Ashley remain strained, a lasting reminder that the show's drama wasn't just scripted television, it was their real-life unraveling before an audience of millions. The tragic ending of Hardcore Pawn isn't found in one explosive scandal or shocking twist. Instead, it lies in the slow collapse of what the show once promised: fame, fortune, and lasting legacy. Instead of being remembered as pioneers of reality TV, many of the cast members are remembered for the fights, the chaos, and the downfall that followed them into their personal lives.